What up, sir?
Hey, all.
Y'all ready for next week?
Yeah. Are you guys going to be at Breakpoint?
We're streaming live, baby. We got a
go.
media booth.
Let's
We are, I think,
go.
media partners. We're gonna look good. I mean, we got some merch, brother. I mean, I do like your shirt for sure, but we can upgrade you.
Yeah.
Next week.
No. I need it. I need some seed club swag. So I'll be sure to stop by.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. All right. Well, I think I reached out to you. I mean, thank you for coming back on.
Sure.
It was not too long ago that we had you on, but obviously over the last month, OR has been a token that has kind of captured a new level of attention. I love looking at that chart because it was one of those things that was on my radar and I just never spent any time looking at. And then all of a sudden I was like, motherfucker, like rock and roll. And I think you connected me with the team. The team is a little camera shy, I think. They're just, let's frame it as they're just deep building in the mines.
Yeah.
And so you kindly offered to come on and kind of give us some backstory, help us understand what's going on there. My assumption is that kind of emerged from Colosseum in some way. When do you lay the groundwork for us? What is OR and where did it come from? And then we can get into some details.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one-liner for those that don't know about OR, it's a Solana native non-sovereign store of value. And we can get, I guess, later on into what that means and why it's important or interesting. But yeah, we came across them as when we launched Colosseum last year. We ran our first hackathon. They were the grand prize winner of that hackathon. And at the same time, so our hackathons are about 6 weeks long. They launched their the V1 of their protocol basically in the middle of the hackathon along with the token. And it actually got so much attention and so much usage that it kind of like brought Solana to a halt. And so it actually got a lot of attention back then because it was kind of one of the impetuses for changing some of the things that were causing the outages at the time.
Public good.
In a sense, I think, yeah, a lot of people didn't really quite understand the totality of what they were trying to do at the time, and it's evolved quite a bit since then. So happy to jump into it.
I mean, yeah, let's talk about why building a new non-sovereign store value is interesting, and then I think we can talk about the like transition from proof of work to like the new mechanism. I think that's interesting too.
Sure.
But I think just grounding in like why is this an interesting opportunity, and why is Bitcoin not already solved this problem?
For sure. So yeah, at a high level, I think something that I believe, but also a lot of people in crypto believe, is that like the most important market in the 21st century is the one for a non-sovereign sort of hard money. And I think Bitcoin is sort of catalyzed that. It's gone to mainstream adoption. It's getting embedded in the financial ecosystem, and it has, I believe, some deficiencies as a technology and as a store of value. But the market is so important and so big. It's done well despite that. And a lot of, I guess, the improvements over history on it have been sort of marginal and not really affecting the user. So Purecoin was like, oh, we'll do proof of stake instead of proof of work, or like Litecoin will change block times, or there's these kind of like marginal technical things, but it wasn't really a differentiated, I guess, product to what Bitcoin was offering. And Bitcoin is so strong these days in terms of just like liquidity. You can get in and out of that asset more than most assets in the world. It trades 24/7. It's limited supply. It has this really interesting distribution mechanism, which is also sort of proof of work. So that's like one thing maybe we'll get into, is that like the proof of work for Bitcoin is functional because it helps like the Bitcoin network work in the first place and settle transactions and stuff like that. But it also is like importantly the distribution mechanism for this fair launch token that is BTC. And so recently, there's been maybe some technological changes in crypto that has maybe given the opportunity for not store of value, new stores of value to maybe overtake Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's going to keep growing. It's still doing its thing. But I think it's sort of paved the way for additional non-sovereign stores of value to exist. So a lot of people are talking about Zcash right today. And I don't have a strong opinion about that. But one interesting thing is that it did make a pretty big change in terms of adding privacy at the L1. And that's something that's different than Bitcoin. That I think a lot of people would value that privacy for those that are like shielding on that network. Or is interesting because it kind of questioned, like, well, there's these high throughput blockchains that have now come online, right? Namely Solana, but there's others too. And one problem that Bitcoin has is that none of the technologies that have been able to try to scale, I guess, the money part beyond the store value, the medium of exchange, using it for payments, stuff like that, have basically been dead ends as far as I'm concerned. Lightning is kind of a dead end. A lot of the L2s are kind of dead ends. People say, oh, well, you can just wrap it like CVBTC or like WBTC, but that maybe defeats some of the purpose of it, of being this sort of non-sovereign, decentralized sort of thing, because you're kind of trusting in an intermediary, a third party, to custody those assets. Same with maybe the ETFs. Maybe some of the reason that a lot of these OG Bitcoin whales have sold recently is because they don't like the fact that more and more of the Bitcoin supply is being held in sort of these risky third parties, which is going back to the beginning of Bitcoin, is like kind of what you wanted to avoid in the first place. And so what OR is that maybe you don't need to do this with your own L1. Maybe you could start from scratch and engineer a store of value on top of one of these high throughput blockchains, so you can sort of inherit all the composability, the performance, the potential privacy, right? All the layers that are being built in these ecosystems on top of these L1s. And so I'll pause there. That's kind of the high level of what OR is trying to do.
I mean, I think store of values are like fundamentally belief systems. You know, Bitcoin's the kind of cypherpunk. You know, Zcash is privacy. Even the US dollar is like the belief in US hegemony or whatever. So what is that for OR?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of the same. I think it is a belief asset at the core of it. But it's what makes people, I guess, this hardcore community of people that have kind of globbed onto it is, and I'm one of those community members, is that it does have I think a viable technological roadmap to scale well beyond where a Bitcoin could get to. And so if we believe that everyone in the world should have access to this like non-sovereign asset that is decentralized, not held in custody third parties, that you can maybe use one day for even payments, you need to make some technological improvements to make that happen. And I think OR is probably the best shot at it.
So what is actually happening here? Because a core component of Bitcoin is mining. It looks like there's sort of like an evolution in thinking here. Can you sort of break down?
Sure. So yeah, Bitcoin, obviously proof of work. At the time, proof of work was sort of it didn't, I mean, obviously Bitcoin didn't come up with proof of work. I think Adam Back came up with that prior to, but it kind of, I guess, used it in production, maybe for the first time in a serious way. And again, it was for the network itself of like verifying transactions, coming to consensus, things of this nature at the network layer. But more importantly, it was sort of the distribution mechanism for this a fair distribution mechanism. I don't think it was a particularly great distribute. It was good enough, but I don't think it's like optimal, and especially it's not optimal today. So what OR found when it tried to do this proof of work distribution mechanism is that there's so many ASIC farms, and basically these ASIC farms in China, Russia, across the world would just snipe the new supply coming onto the network through the proof of work distribution mechanism, and then just sell it. And then it just cratered the price. I mean, you can look at the price chart over time. It just was a mechanism of leaking value out of the system. And so the new version of OR that's, I guess, like kind of rejuvenated a lot of the interest and the price and all of this, is that they changed the distribution mechanism, where they thought, like, what if we could internalize instead of leaking value to external miners who are just have to pay for electricity costs and whatever, what if we had a system where, I guess, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's this sort of game-like interface where they've sort of said, well, mining is sort of a game in itself, where you have to acquire resources and then, run those machines, and you have a shot at getting a new block reward, right, of new tokens. Well, you could sort of take out the mining part of that, run the same system in sort of this game-like system, and have a fair distribution mechanism of the token. And so that's exactly what's happening today. And so a lot of people think of it as like gambling, or like there's people I guess like have qualms with that, but like at the end of the day, it is sort of a game, as proof of work is also sort of a game.
Yeah, it makes it far more visual. I mean, I think it's pretty brilliant it reminds me of bingo in some way, right? It's a very simple thing. You can kind of intuit it pretty quickly. Every minute there's a new game that gets played. People put money on different squares, I'm assuming. I haven't done it yet. And it just slowly dissolves away. And if you have your money on the square that is last, you win.
They had a good quote from the post I think they wrote a few days ago, where they said, generating cryptographic hashes is not a critical piece of the game theory. One can remove all computation and hashing from the picture and still get a mathematically equivalent game.
Yeah.
So it's really separating. And we were actually talking to a team yesterday who's building, a Bitcoin prime brokerage on Hyperliquid, and very much was like urging us to separate the idea of, Bitcoin the asset from Bitcoin the chain. And I think this idea of like separating a store of value from its need to actually secure a network is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard to run an L1 and like scale the actual technology. Like it's so hard. And the fact that Bitcoin had to do that and also sort of grow the asset was like a pretty impressive thing that worked to an extent. But I think what's interesting for the OR team is that they're just focused on this like fair distribution mechanism. They don't need to worry about maybe the performance that's relied on, like the Solana team, Anza, Firedancer, all these teams working at the infra layer. And they also don't need to really worry about like maybe growing its own DeFi ecosystem. That flywheel is already going with Camino and Jito and all these AMMs, and like, so it's a really interesting proposition that they're just like hyper focused on creating like this pristine store of value asset that's inheriting all of this other sort of economy being built on this high performance L1 and benefiting from that.
How do you actually go and grow a belief system? Like, can it be like engineered intentionally, or is it kind of about creating the conditions for it to emerge organically?
I think it's an art and a science. One is the science part, I think, is kind of what they've done is like, can you engineer this sort of game, this like fair distribution game? And can you engineer where it benefits the long-term holders versus the short-term players? And so what's interesting about, or when you dig into it, it's not just like, oh, you click some squares and that's the end of the game, some win, some lose. If you, for instance, play the game, let's say over the long term, and you actually don't sell the ore that you win from the game, it's called unrefined ore. You get an extra percent. You get a percentage basically yield from all the people who are selling their ore. And so one interesting chart to look at is just like the number of unrefined ore is just like way up and to the right, which is sort of incentivizing people to actually hold the asset long-term through mini games. Because the game, and this is like what people sometimes qualm with, is that like sometimes the game is plus EV, but sometimes it's negative EV. And so it's not always, maybe you shouldn't always be playing the game if you're just looking for an EV way of playing this game. But over the long term, if you believe in, or if you believe in that concept, there's a way to basically benefit as a long-term holder that doesn't exist in something like a Zcash or a Bitcoin.
So how are you playing the game? Like, are you actively placing bets on squares, or are you more of a kind of passive holder or unrefined ore guy?
So Colosseum is a fund. We just stake that. So that's another option. That's like another part of the protocol, is that for stakers, they're also getting a percentage of these fees that are being generated from the protocol, and which are substantial, by the way. Like the revenue being generated by this protocol is in the top like 4 or 5 I'm
looking at the Dune here, right? There was $1 million day back on the 11th of November. Yesterday it was about 200,000 USD. Some peaks up to north of 600,000, and I guess a low 2 days ago of just under 100,000 in the last month, which is wild. So that's basically 10% of the value that's moving through the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way to do it. We stake. I personally I'm doing the unrefined. So I am playing the game rather than just going on the market, buying some ore and staking it. It's actually high. If I want to use the same equivalent amount of SOL or USDC to buy ore over a certain amount of time, it's better for me just to play the game and keep all the ore that I'm getting from playing the game in unrefined, basically. So
and what's your strategy? What's your strategy for playing the game? Are there like
I just
like roulette? Like are there like lucky numbers you just sit on, or like how
so this is super interesting. No one really knows exactly what the optimal way to play the game is at this point. So there's this whole developer ecosystem of people building these interfaces of like the best way to play the game at any given time. I just, for the most part, like choose all the squares at a low dollar amount. And so that's maybe more equivalent to what like a miner would do. It's like, oh, you just put up all your hash. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but like you're fine with it over the long term.
Yeah, there's sort of a manual and auto mode here.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. I mean, the staking has been paying out about a 20%
yes
APY right now. So
unrefined is like 150 to 200%, something like that.
So I'm getting sort of news here from Peace that apparently back in our previous live stream, the weekly one, back in those refined era of my life, Peace actually did a What's Peace Doing in Crypto stream where he was mining ore, just as it switched to V2, I guess. So we apparently he was in the mines.
That was probably V1.
It was last year, yeah, it probably was.
Yeah, last year would have been proof of work. So yeah, he was probably doing proof of work.
We should dig that.
Yeah,
dig that clip up.
We should dig that clip up.
The other interesting thing that didn't turn out to be true, but is turning out to be more true in the second version, is that a lot of people qualm with basically the initial distribution of proof of work tokens through Bitcoin because, like, one, Satoshi got a ton. Now we don't think those are ever going to move, but like early miners, basically due to the 4-year halvening, like got a ton at the beginning. And so people who came in later, they really couldn't participate in the network in the same way. Versus like Ore has taken a different stance on this, where I guess a part of the vision of the first version was like, oh, we're going to build basically like an ASIC resistant algorithm that anyone can mine. You can mine from your like phone. That turned out to be not accurate. Like there was always a way to break the algorithm. In fact, like they use the same algorithm that Tor uses, and I don't think the Tor community is even aware of this, but it was broken through Ore. Like some group of miners figured out how to break that. So I don't know if there's any Tor users, but it's broken basically, as far as I understand. Pretty interesting. But with the new version, because you've removed the mining part, like people are like on their Seeker phone, for instance, it's like a really popular app. So people are like playing the game and mining on their phone, and and there's no 4-year halvenings. It's linear over time. So even in like 20 years from now, people can still be mining this theoretically by participating in this game.
Yeah, super interesting. I guess I got to go click some blocks here. I mean, I love this. I mean, to be the most...
The post the team put out like 3 days ago, it's worth reading.
Nice. All right. Anyways, okay, we got to move on from you, Matt. You just lullabied us here with some novel, interesting. To me, like the ultimate sort of, I guess, application of crypto is these sort of like really fancy vending machines that can just live forever. I think that's why Bitcoin is very interesting, because it kind of bridges this sort of, IRL with digital in a way, but it also still feels like there's like a lot of ongoing, investment thinking, etc., that goes into that. I've just had this infatuation with, smart contracts as really fancy vending machines, and the idea of being able to build something that will just continue to work as long as there's some people wanting to play, and for that value to sort of continue to accrue to the network. And so this tickles my fancy in those ways. So, and it's 100+% APY on refining my ore supply. It seems interesting. I mean, this feels like was this one of the big winners that sort of come out of your first batch? Is this like
yeah? So our first investment when we started last year was MetaDAO, and our second was Or. And so
awful track record. You guys need to step up here a little bit.
No, we're just super interested. Like, I think you kind of nailed it. Like, when I got into crypto, this is like kind of the things that were interesting to me. It was like, can you apply sort of novel economic and systems like in code that are like self-sufficient over a long period of time, and like see how those experiments turn out. And I think things like this, I want to see a lot more of, because it's super interesting. Most will fail, but like, if we try 100 of these type of things, like some of them are going to probably change the world. So yeah, hopefully if there's any founders listening out there, just go for it.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, man. Well, we're excited to, I guess we get to IRL next week. That should be fun. But yeah, thanks for hopping on and kind of demystifying Or for us. You got a convert here. And I think we've added it to 11 a.m. strategy today. So we are riding, I guess. I don't think we can stake. We're comfy in spot. 11 a.m. strategy, comfy in spot.
Awesome. All right, guys.
Thanks, Matty.
Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Peace, man.